The first word that I picked out today was authenticity, meaning the quality of being original, legitimate. There's something authentic about this painting, something true and original. It displays authenticity. How can he establish authenticity? The quality of being true, original, legit, selling health products while he's smoking those things. Or, the authenticity of the quote has occasionally been disputed, but without reason. How accurate, how true, original, legitimate that quote is, has been disputed. The authenticity, essentially the authenticness, the authenticity of the quote. Is it original, legitimate, true? Autobiographical. Of or relating to or influenced by one's life or past personal experiences. To write an autobiography means that you're writing an account of your life, your bio, your life, and auto, you're doing it yourself. You are writing an account of your life. So if a character is somewhat autobiographical, maybe it's based on you and your life experiences. Or in this sentence, in recounting the exploits, the adventures of some half-dozen Soviet spies, the author synthesizes, mixes together much autobiographical and historical material. So the author mixes together, synthesizes historical material that happened in real history with autobiographical material, stuff that happened in his or her own life. A great adjective to throw into a sentence. If you want to say something is somewhat autobiographical, it's somewhat based on your life experiences. And the next word is avarice. Excessive or insatiable desire for wealth or gain. Greed in its purest form. Cupidity. Huge, unsatisfiable, that's insatiable, desire for wealth, advantage, gain. The egoism of the upper classes held military duty in contempt. They despised serving in the military, while their avarice, their greed, depopulated the countryside, made the countryside too expensive for people to live in, and so people left. It was depopulated. So if you want to say someone's got a really serious case of greed, you can say they suffer from avarice, or they demonstrate avarice. Great word to know, definitely could come up in the GRE or many other tests. Aversion. A feeling of repugnance or dislike towards something with a desire to avoid or turn away from it. I have a true aversion to social events. I dislike them, I never want to do them, and I try to avoid them. A bit like averting your eyes from something horrible, looking away. To demonstrate aversion is to have a feeling of disgust or dislike towards something. The context will tell you whether it's extreme aversion or moderate aversion. But in this sentence, we have diners who want to reduce the size of their environmental footprint might reassess their aversion to bugs. In other words, people who eat at restaurants currently have an aversion to bugs, a feeling of dislike towards eating insects. But you might want to rethink that. You might want to reassess that opinion because eating bugs apparently is good for the environment. Who knew? Next word, avid. Characterized by enthusiasm and vigorous pursuit, eager and enthusiastic. He was an avid golfer. He was an avid fan of Manchester City. A short and fancy word for enthusiastic, passionate. To be avid about something. More often just used as an adjective right next to another word. She was an avid skier, for example. Awry. Interesting to pronounce. It's not awry, it's awry. Off the correct or expected course. Amiss. Something went awry. Or to go awry. Essentially, something went wrong and didn't go to plan. And the famous quote is, sadly, even the best laid plans sometimes go awry. Go off course, they miss their target. To be honest, the word is most often used about plans, intentions, rather than about like an arrow or something. My plan to get healthy went awry when I discovered that new home delivery app, for example. usually about intentions, plans, courses, journeys going awry. To badger someone, to harass or annoy persistently, to pester them. Obviously, you might know about the animal badger, but did you know about the verb badger? To badger someone is to harass them or annoy them persistently, irritate them, pester them for something. The foreman so taunted the workers, so badgered them, got on their back and told them that they dared not quit. That's something obviously bad happened at the mill here. But to badger someone, you're essentially harassing them verbally. Or maybe you send them an email every half an hour asking them what's up with the project. You're just constantly annoying them, getting in their face, getting on top of them, on their back, to pester them, to badger them. Baleful, deadly or pernicious in influence, foreboding or threatening evil. Most often, to be honest, we're talking about a stare or a look. Like, have you heard that expression, if looks could kill? If you give a baleful stare at someone, or she gave you a baleful look, it means they could almost kill you. They really dislike what you've done or who you are. Foreboding in the sense that it reveals that they really might attack you at some point, perhaps. So the origin of the word is about being evil or deadly, but it has evolved somewhat to be more about a look that you give someone, a baleful glance, a baleful stare. So we have the sentence, after she insulted him, he gave her a baleful look. Barometer, something that indicates fluctuations, for example, in public opinion, or a standard, a test. I have just focused on these two definitions of the word barometer because I think these are the definitions that most people don't know or are not as familiar with. For example, with the second definition, something that indicates fluctuations, you could say, housing sales are an example of an economic barometer. They fluctuate, right? Sometimes you have a lot of sales of houses, other times you have less. And that indicates things about the economy that you can realize. So housing sales are a good barometer, a good test, almost like a thermometer to gauge the temperature of the economy. Housing sales could be an economic barometer of the health of the economy, for example. Or you could think of a barometer as like a testing instrument, such as the third definition. It was a useful barometer to measure high school talent. If you want to measure someone's talent, say in basketball, maybe organizing a free throw tournament would be a good barometer, a good test, a good standard to check their talent in basketball. So we have two definitions there of the word barometer. One as something that reveals something about the state, a bit like a thermometer. A barometer is something that reveals something that fluctuates. So a good barometer of her popularity was how many likes she got on Instagram, for example. Or I would say that's a bad barometer, but each to their own. But then the third definition is of a standard or a test that you could use. So let's come up with a suitable barometer to measure the success of our new candidates. A new standard we can measure them by. Barometer. To bask. To lie or relax in pleasant warmth or atmosphere. That's the literal definition. If you're literally lying back and enjoying warmth, you're basking. But more commonly now, we have the secondary definition. To take pleasure or derive enjoyment in general. Not necessarily to do with warmth. It might be, and is most commonly now, to do with praise, to bask in praise. Hence we have the two example sentences. One, we sat basking in the sun. They're literally enjoying the warmth and heat of the sun. But then secondarily, we have the definition of just basking in something metaphorical. Just enjoy it and bask in the praise that you deserve. Obviously, praise isn't literal heat, but it is something that you can enjoy and derive enjoyment from. And most commonly, the word bask, I would say, is used in the phrase to bask in the praise. Or the celebrity basked in the adulation they received from the press. They take pleasure and enjoyment from the praise and adulation they're receiving. Two definitions there for the price of one word, bask. Bauble. I wanted to throw this one in as another interesting word to give you guys. So literally, a bauble is a small showy item usually used for decoration. So Christmas tree baubles, little decorations, little items, tiny ornaments, not a massive thing, not like the angel on top, but a tiny little sparkly ornament. That would be like a trinket, you could say, or a bauble, a small item to decorate something, often a Christmas tree or anything that you're trying to make look more luxurious. But because of that original definition, there is a secondary definition that is used just as commonly, which is something that is superficially attractive. It looks nice on the outside, but it's actually barely worth anything, very, very cheap, useless or worthless. And sometimes even these definitions merge together. So if there's a small item that looks kind of fancy, but maybe isn't worth quite as much as it was selling for, you could cheekily call it a bauble, as in this sentence. Over a third of all the luxury baubles sold by the likes of Louis Vuitton and Gucci are bought by Chinese splurgers, people spending lots of money, according to Bain, a consultancy. So in this sentence, we've got the best of both definitions. Obviously, Gucci might sell maybe a handbag or a watch, for example, and you could call those luxury baubles because they're small, showy items. But maybe The Economist here, which I think is where I got the sentence from, is saying that they're maybe a bit too expensive for what they're worth. They're very attractive, but they're not quite as useful as the amount of money people are spending on them. So a lovely little word to learn there, bauble. To begrudge something. To give or concede reluctantly or with pleasure. Or you could say begrudgingly. To give something grudgingly is where you're giving it, but you hold a slight grudge that you had to give it up. Like, why do I have to give it away? I gave it away begrudgingly. I gave it away grudgingly, reluctantly, with displeasure. Often with a connotation, as in the second definition, to envy those who got the thing that you gave away. Often also using the phrase, don't begrudge her success, or don't begrudge his success. So don't envy or be displeased about someone else's success. Don't hold a grudge against them for doing well. Don't begrudge their achievements, their acclaim. Or as they say, you can use it like an adverb. Both the words grudgingly and begrudgingly mean the same thing. He handed over the medal that he thought he deserved begrudgingly. Gave it away even though he thought he should actually keep it. The little girl picked up the toy in the store, but when the parents told her to put it back, she put it back on the shelf begrudgingly, reluctantly and with displeasure, almost holding a grudge against the parents for telling her to do that. Belated, delayed beyond the usual time. Often you hear it as happy belated birthday wishes, as in you've forgotten the birthday and you're saying happy birthday maybe the day after or a couple of days after, and you're acknowledging that your message was delayed beyond when it should have been given. So you're saying happy belated birthday wishes. Or, in the second example, this person is conceding the race. They're admitting that they lost the race, but doing it maybe a bit too late. Maybe they should have admitted it a bit earlier. So you would say, she belatedly conceded the race. Look in the middle there, that word late in the middle. That gives you an indication that if something is belated, it's a bit later than it should have been. To belittle. To speak slightingly of, to disparage. Again, notice the word little at the end. You're making them feel little, you're belittling them, or you're belittling something they've done. Just make sure you don't order her around or belittle her. Make her feel small, disparage her, put her down. A good way to hurt someone's confidence is to belittle their hard work. Try to make it seem as if it's nothing, worthless. To belittle something or someone. Bellicose. Inclined to start quarrels or wars. I believe in Latin belly is war, so to be bellicose is to be aggressive, and usually in the context of starting a fight or starting a war. Never in peacetime, perhaps, have the statements of our government officials been more relentlessly bellicose, provocative, inclined to start a quarrel, a fight, a war. To be bellicose. Demonstrating bellicosity. Belligerent. Again, we have that starting belly, meaning war. So a belligerent in the noun sense is actually someone engaged in war. But more commonly, to act in a belligerent way is to act in a way where you're exhibiting assertiveness, hostility, or combativeness. Why are you being so belligerent? Why are you being so aggressive, hostile, inclined to start a fight? Don't be so belligerent. It took very little alcohol to make him belligerent, make him aggressive, assertive. And he became ever more thuggish and incoherent when he threw in a few sleeping pills as well. So even though belly still means war, the word belligerent is a little bit different from bellicose in that it's less likely to be talking about war. It's more likely to be talking about like an attitude of hostility, aggression, being combative, inclined to start a fight, but not a literal war. Unless we're using belligerent in the noun sense, like she was a belligerent in the battle. She was one of the fighters. That's the noun, but belligerent in the softer sense is the adjective, where you're assertive and hostile. To bemoan. Notice the word moan at the end. You're moaning something, so you're expressing your grief and distress over something. They bemoaned the death of their leader. Essentially, what you're doing is you're regarding it with displeasure, disapproval, or regret. There are a few different ways there to use the word bemoan. He bemoans the fact that the team lost again. He moans about, he is sad about, he regrets the fact that the team lost again. Notice how we use it there as a verb. He bemoans the fact that the team lost again. I read an article bemoaning the decline in voter turnout. That article was moaning, so you can use it as a verb. The article was bemoaning the decline in voter turnout, expressing their distress over that, their regret, their disapproval about that fact. I hope you don't bemoan the fact that I included this word in this list. And now we have a series of words that I picked out that begin with Benny, and I wanted to give you all of them together to illustrate the benefit of knowing the etymology of certain words, knowing the origin. So Benny at the beginning there means good. And so all of these words coming up have something to do with being good. A benefactor is someone who does good, usually in the form of donating or supporting, patronizing something. So a benefactor is someone or something that provides help or an advantage. Someone that confers a benefit, especially a person who makes a gift or bequest. And that's how we use the word. Someone who donates or makes a gift becomes a benefactor of that organization or a benefactor of that person. An anonymous benefactor gave the school 12 new computers. They donated 12 new computers. Beneficent, notice the start again. Beneficent here is an adjective rather than a noun, as in the previous word, benefactor. It's an adjective, it's a describing word that you would use about someone. To call them beneficent means they're generous. They're inclined to doing good, like a beneficent policy. It's a good policy, it produces good outcomes, usually to do with kindness and charity, like the word benevolent, or in the sentence, a beneficent couple who are regular volunteers at a homeless shelter. The way to describe that couple would be to say that they are beneficent. They produce good outcomes. Beneficiary. To be a beneficiary, you are the person that receives the good stuff. Maybe the donations or maybe the charitable acts. You receive the benefits. You are the beneficiary. You are the person who receives the good stuff from maybe the benefactor who is being beneficent. So to be the beneficiary, you are the person or thing that receives help or advantage. For example, the middle class are the main beneficiaries of these economic reforms. So it's a good thing, producing benefits, these economic reforms. And who is going to benefit? The middle class. They are the beneficiaries, the people receiving the good stuff. Benign. Now I know it doesn't have the B-E-N-E, but it does begin with B-E-N. So we're still talking about something being good. And the first definition describes the impact on cancer. So for example, you can have a benign tumour that's actually good and not likely to threaten your life, and a malign tumour that's much worse. So benign, you're not saying it's great news, obviously, but you are saying it's the better type. It's of a mild type that does not threaten your health or life. It's not likely to become cancerous. It's a benign tumour. But the second definition follows on from that and says that if something's benign, it has the character of being harmless. Don't worry about it. It's harmless, well-intentioned, but don't worry about it. It has no significant effect. It's benign. It's mild, doesn't threaten your health. So we have the sentence, rather than a benign, well-intentioned, harmless fairy tale creature that delivers babies, the marabou stork is an ugly, viciously predatory African bird. I never knew that. Bequeath. And so we have moved on, obviously, from the Benny words, but I hope that was helpful to give you a series of those words. And to bequeath something, somewhat linked in a way, because it means to be a benefactor, to give or leave by your will, usually used of personal property. To bequeath something after you die, especially. Basically, you die and you say that, I don't know, this son or this daughter gets the house. You're handing it down, you're transmitting it. But as the second definition makes clear, it doesn't necessarily have to be when you die. So it can be more metaphorical, to bequeath a lesson to someone, for example. These are powerful lessons, bequeathed, handed over to future generations. More commonly, I would say, it would be, oh, she bequeathed the house in her will. But you can use it metaphorically too, to hand over or leave, to give. And finally for today, bereavement. The state or fact of being bereaved or deprived of something or someone. Essentially, it means when someone died, you feel really bad, full of grief, and you enter a state of bereavement where you grieve over that person dying. We should be sensitive around people who have recently suffered bereavements, often used with that verb, suffered. I have suffered a bereavement. I have known someone closely who has died. It's a rather solemn and somber way to end the series, but I hope these 24 words that I picked out are useful additions to your vocabulary. I love picking them out and choosing the words that I haven't talked about before and that I think will be most useful to you guys. So do let me know if it helps.